All right, let's talk about a 1,300-year-old book from Japan. Now, I know what you're thinking, but forget about dusty old scrolls and boring history. The Nihon Shoki, which means the Chronicles of Japan, is something else entirely. It's more like a high-stakes political thriller, a national branding project, and most importantly, a playbook for survival, written by a nation that had its back completely against the wall. And that brings us to the core question of this entire story. It's a question that has shaped world history for centuries, and for Japan back in the 8th century, it was the most important question they faced. Their answer was going to define them forever. So, to really get this book, you have to understand the incredible pressure Japan was under. Imagine it's 720 AD. Your next-door neighbor, the Tang Dynasty in China, isn't just another country, they're the superpower of the day. They have overwhelming military power, and their culture is dominant. For all the smaller nations around them, this wasn't just a concern. It was a straight-up existential threat. See, the game wasn't just about armies. It was about perception. If China looked at you and saw a barbarian nation, you were basically a target, ripe for conquest. The only way to survive, the only path forward, was to prove that you were civilized, a sophisticated, modern state that deserved respect and independence. It was a diplomatic and cultural arms race. So, how do you win a battle of perception like that? Well, Japan's answer was audacious. They decided to fight back not with more soldiers or bigger walls, but with a story. A massive, state-sponsored official history, designed from the ground up to project a powerful new national image to the entire world. What this means is that the Nihon Shoki isn't just a passive record of things that happened. Oh no. It's a deliberate, calculated act of statecraft. It's a political tool engineered to establish the legitimacy of the emperor, showcase a unified country, and prove to China that Japan wasn't some backwater territory. It was a major player on the world stage. And believe me, this was no small project. We are talking about 30 massive volumes overseen by Prince Toneri himself, who was one of the emperor's sons. And get this, it was written in classical Chinese. Why? Because that was the international language of power and diplomacy. It was like writing it in English today. You did that to make sure your message was heard loud and clear. This was Japan's moonshot, a national branding project on an epic scale. So, what's actually in this grand national story? Is it just a bunch of feel-good myths? Not even close. Instead, it details 3 incredibly bloody chapters of Japan's own internal conflicts. The story starts with a clash of civilizations that would completely reshape the nation. You could say it was time to install a whole new operating system. Back in the 6th century, Buddhism arrives in Japan, and is not just a religion, it's a whole package deal, bringing advanced continental technology, culture, and new systems of government. And this just sparked a huge, fierce debate. On one side, you had the progressive Soga clan, basically saying, hey, look around, everyone's doing this, we have to adopt it or we'll get left behind. But on the other side, the conservative Mononobe clan was terrified, arguing if we do this, our traditional gods will be furious and destroy us. Well, that argument didn't stay a debate for long. It exploded into a full-blown war. In the end, the progressives won. The Soga clan completely crushed their rivals, and Japan's new operating system, Buddhism, was installed as the core of its social and political infrastructure. But this victory created a brand new problem. The Soga clan became unbelievably powerful, maybe even more powerful than the emperor himself. So, with all this new power, the Soga clan basically became tyrants. Japan had just traded one huge problem for another. To fix this, to get the country back on track and restore power to the emperor, something drastic had to happen, and it was going to be shocking and violent. You have to understand, the politics of this time were just ruthless. In the middle of a very serious state ceremony, the young Prince Naka-no-Oe himself pulls out his sword and cuts down the Soga leader, right there in front of the empress. It was a shocking, bloody coup. But that single, violent act was the spark that ignited the Great Taika Reform, which totally dismantled the old clan system and created a modern, centralized state ruled by the emperor. But the bloodshed, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The Nihon Shoki goes on to document one final, devastating conflict, the largest civil war in ancient Japanese history. And this time, it wasn't about religion or clans. It was a brutal, personal war for the throne itself. Seriously, this was a real-life Game of Thrones situation. After the emperor dies, his brother and his son immediately go to war over who gets the crown. The uncle, Prince Uwama, was the clear underdog. He was totally outnumbered, so he had to flee to the mountains to save his life. But there, he regrouped, he rallied powerful warlords to his side and launched this brilliant counterattack. His forces just swept across the country, and he ultimately drove his own nephew to take his own life, seizing the throne for himself. And here's the kicker. The man who won this unbelievably brutal civil war, the one who saw firsthand the ultimate price of division, he becomes Emperor Tenmu. And he is the very emperor who orders the creation of the Nihon Shoki. He understood better than anyone just how desperate the need was for a unifying national story. So after all of that, after detailing religious wars, brutal assassinations, and a massive civil war, what's the ultimate message of this book? What's the point? Well, by laying out all of this chaos, the Nihon Shoki delivers a powerful, hard-won piece of wisdom to its own people and to the world. This famous quote from Prince Shotoko is held up as the nation's guiding light. Now, at first glance, that sounds nice, right? Gentle, almost passive. But wait a minute. Given the incredibly brutal history we've just walked through, what does harmony really mean in this context? The wa, or harmony, that's being described here, it's not about being nice or avoiding arguments. Not at all. It's a pragmatic political process. It demands that you debate, you argue, you exhaust every single opinion. But, and this is the key, once a consensus is reached, everyone, and I mean everyone, has to cooperate fully. It's a formula for unified action born directly from the painful lessons of division. It's a principle you can still see reflected in Japan's consensus-driven culture today. And when you look at it that way, the Nihon Shoki becomes this timeless case study of state management. The debates over Buddhism, that's a masterclass in managing globalization. The coup against the Soga, that's a lesson in how to break through powerful entrenched interests. The aftermath of the Jinshin War is a textbook on how you reintegrate a society after a bitter conflict. Honestly, for any leader today in business and politics anywhere, this book is just packed with the wisdom of survival. So, it makes you think, doesn't it? In our own turbulent world with its own superpowers and existential threats, what are the stories we're telling ourselves about who we are? And what ancient playbook, one built on forging unity out of chaos, could we learn from today?